even if you do continue managing yourself, it's still a labor expense, right? So if you're going to calculate the returns of a rental property, for example, versus like a stock index fund, one of those is completely passive. The other one takes a lot of your time and labor. So
That's
it's
right.
apples and oranges if you aren't accounting for the cost of that labor, even if it's your own labor.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Richer Geek Podcast. We have a returning guest just because he's so special with us. We have Brian Davis, SparkRental.com. He's a real estate investor, personal finance writer, founder of SparkRental. He owns fractional shares in over 1,500 units, and he's a real estate and personal finance expert. Everyone knows these names: Inman, U.S. News, World Report, BiggerPockets, and Go Banking Rates. How you doing, Brian?
Michael, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and we just wanted to reconnect. It's been a couple of years since you've been on the podcast. Just seeing what's going on in your world. Just how you've dealt with. You're an expat. How you dealt with. I want to get a little bit about with COVID and just maybe being a investor in all these different areas, not living in the United States. So let's go back a little bit with your background. Remind everyone who you are, how you got started.
Sure. So I got my start in real estate right out of college. I totally fell into a job with no intentionality whatsoever. My stepdad knew a guy who owned a mortgage company, a subprime mortgage lender. This is back in 2003 when subprime mortgages were all the rage. I'm sure you remember. So I started working for this guy and his company, and it quickly came to light that he and his partner really needed someone to handle their own personal hard money loans that they were lending, as opposed to the regular Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac kind of mortgages that the company was doing. So I started doing hard money loans for real estate investors, watching guys make money hand over fist, doing flips, doing BRRRR deals, all that stuff. I'm like, I could do this. I could do this myself. So I, plowed all my money into those properties. And then 2008 hit, and I totally lost my shirt, and it was
As a
a
lot of us
very,
did.
very expensive. Yeah, it was an expensive set of lessons. But rather than turning tail and walking away from real estate entirely, I kind of looked at those losses as tuition, as the cost of education for real estate and real estate investing. From there, I went into the online space because I could no longer make any money as a hard money lender, right? Because no one was doing that anymore. No one was flipping houses anymore. No one was buying and renovating deals anymore, even though it was probably a good time to buy and hold deals. But there was no money to be made doing that. So I had to totally change jobs, in the midst of all my investments totally melting down. But I got into the online space doing it was legal forms for rental investors and landlords. And so I learned online marketing and how, SaaS company works and e-commerce companies. And in 2015, split off, and I guess it was early 2016. Split off, started SparkRental with a former colleague of mine, and it has taken a lot of unexpected turns over the years. Our product suite has evolved in ways that we never expected. And in fact, the last time you and I spoke on this show, SparkRental's current main focus was not even a twinkle in our eyes yet. So, it's been a fun journey.
Yeah,
to be
and
sure.
it's amazing, catching up with people. Sometimes you're on podcasts, you're like, oh, I wonder what this guy's doing, and just to see that you've kept on it, and everybody at SparkRental, RENTAL.com. Go check it out. For everyone out there, where are you living now, Brian?
We just moved to Lima, Peru. We were formerly in Brazil. We were in the capital city, Brasilia. And before that, we were in Abu Dhabi, the capital of the UAE.
Yeah, I just noticed it's like every time I come across you, it's like going, the guy doesn't stay put, for very long. He's always in these. But, that is the greatest thing, everybody, about being a real estate investor, doing your own thing. You could live in an RV, or you could live in Peru. You live on a mountaintop. As long as you have internet connection, you can do your job, and it's just fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about your concentration with SparkRental. We're going to get into a little bit about how our listeners can be passive investors, but what's your concentrations on that right now?
Yeah, so let me back up just one moment. When we first launched SparkRental, we thought that our main business was going to be property management software specifically designed for small landlords, mom and pop landlords with 3 units, 5 units, 10 units, people who are working unrelated jobs and just wanted to own some rental properties on the side. And we do offer that. We do offer that to this day. But what we have discovered is that our audience is more interested in both learning real estate investing and also joining us in investments. So when we first started hearing feedback from our audience, the first thing we heard was, how can I learn more about, this aspect of real estate investing or that aspect? So we built out this huge blog. We've got, I don't know, 450, 500 articles on there at this point. We started a podcast. We started doing webinars and online classes. We created free online courses. We created a premium online course all about how to build passive income from real estate, reach financial independence from real estate. And then as we started digging into what our students wanted from there and having more of those one-on-one conversations with actual paying students of ours, what came up again and again is, can I invest with you guys? Like, can I invest alongside you guys in some of the deals that you're doing? And Denny and I at first was like, no, we can't do that. And then we were like, well, maybe we could do that. So we experimented with a couple single family home investment properties where we opened it up to our students to invest alongside of us. And it was intended as sort of a learning tool, but also a way to, earn while you learn or learn while you earn, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, we did a couple of those, and that was way too much work, right? I mean, it was a lot of work and not a lot of money, for the amount of work involved. So we kind of went back to the drawing board, and we were like, this is not making sense financially. It's it's taking up way too much of our time. And it was around that time that I discovered passive real estate syndications, and I had started investing in some of those by myself, or individually. And I went back to Denny, and I was like, what if we did this as an investment club for our students? And she's like, is that legal? So we had to talk to some attorneys and figure that out. But it turns out it is legal. So we launched an investment club, a real estate investment club around passive investments, syndications specifically. And every month we invest in a new syndication deal. We propose it to our club, and whoever wants to invest in it can do so. No one has to do anything if they don't want to. But the big differentiator is that it's $5,000 minimum per club member to invest in a deal instead of the typical $50,000 or $100,000 that you normally need to invest in a real estate syndication deal. So it's a huge difference there. We also only do deals that allow non-accredited investors, so we can keep it inclusive for all of our members, all of our students, and not just the wealthy ones. But for the wealthier people too, that lets them spread their money among a lot more deals, right? So even if you have all the money in the world, it's still nicer to have more investments, spread across different states, cities, different operators, different types of properties, self-storage, mobile home parks, multifamily, even outdoor hospitality, like RV parks and campgrounds. So yeah, we're really big on diversification, letting people spread smaller amounts of money across more deals.
And it's very interesting. I believe you might be the first one or maybe one of two that allow non-accredited investors. Usually it's like, oh my God, it's just, I don't know this. I only do accredited investors in my syndications. What are some of the challenges or differences? I know it's a different reg. It's still under Reg D, but still a lot more paperwork, a lot more scrutiny. Tell us a little bit about the paperwork that, some of my listeners might have done some accredited stuff, but when those that are non-accredited, what can they expect when they get started?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. So we are not syndicators ourselves. We are not selling securities. We don't take a cut of any of the money that's invested in any of these deals. In fact, quite the opposite. We invest our own personal money in each one of these deals. So we're not raising funds on behalf of syndicators. We're not, again, we're not selling securities. So that means that we can only invest in 506B deals or a small number of other regulatory types that allow non-accredited investors in the deals that we propose in our investment club. So that does restrict us some, but that's a price that we're willing to pay to stay inclusive so that all of our members can participate in every single deal. Now, in the future, we might start offering some bonus deals that are accredited only, but our pledge and our promise to our club members is, on average, every single month, or on average once a month, we're going to propose a new deal, and it will allow non-accredited investors, and you can participate with as little as $5,000.
Wow, I mean, that's fantastic. It opens up all these. I may say younger people that are just getting started and want to learn, and just say, hey. Because I know I was just reading a Wall Street Journal article that said the younger generations, they really shy away from the stock market. They're actually looking for alternative assets to invest in, just because, that's what grandpa and dad did, in the stock market, and, they pulled their hair out. So go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say, so a lot of people, millennials in particular, who were reaching their young adult years around the crash of 2008, really saw their parents suffer during the stock market crash, and maybe too with real estate, right? Because real estate had a hard time then as well. But I think that left a pretty deep impression on the millennial generation in particular, watching their parents' stock portfolios, cut in half. That left an impression on them. Now, Gen Z, who is now reaching their young adult years, they were pretty young then. So it may not have left as much of an impression on them. But I think for a lot of people who were in their late teens, in their 20s, for the 2008 crash, watching their parents' retirement nest egg, get cut in half over the course of a few months, I think that was really terrifying for their parents and scary for those young adults to watch and to witness. So I think you're right that a lot of young adults today are very wary of the stock market. The stock market obviously had a great bull run during the teens. Obviously 2022 was not a great year for stocks, but yeah, no, I think that 2008 and the Great Recession did leave some scars in the memory of a lot of young investors.
Yeah, and old, and everyone also.
Sure,
but,
yeah.
That's why I diversify, definitely.
Yes.
So, what is your average time? Someone comes in, they give you $5,000, and quarterly dividends. Tell us a little bit what they expect. What's kind of the flow of your investment?
Sure. So what we do is, when a deal comes along that we think is a good fit for our club, we'll email all the club members and we'll schedule a face-to-face or online face-to-face meeting, a video call with the sponsor of that deal, so that our club members can grill them in real time, ask them questions directly. It's really important to us that Denny and I are not the ones who are vetting deals, on behalf of the club members. We vet them as a club. That's probably also an important distinction legally. We're not the ones who are vetting this. It's, all of us together are vetting these deals. And then anyone who wants to participate in that month's deal just lets us know by email. We create a new LLC. We open a new joint bank account for that LLC specifically. We gather all the investors' funds in that new joint bank account, invest in the syndication deal, and then our joint bank account gets paid out with distributions once distributions start, which could be as soon as a couple months, or it could take a couple years, depending on the deal, right? And what we do is we elect a treasurer for each deal, and that treasurer will redistribute everybody's distributions back out to them, as they come in. Typically quarterly is how often we do that. Regardless of whether the distributions get paid monthly or quarterly, it just keeps things easier for the treasurer if they can send them out quarterly. But yeah, everyone gets their cut, proportionate to what they invested. And when the syndication closes, when they sell the property, or if they refinance for infinite returns, everybody gets paid out again proportionate to what they invested.
And how do they come across these deals? Is it each club member just submits it, or are there other GPs that come to your club? How do you find?
Yeah, so that's part of the service that Denny, my partner, and I are offering here is we network with sponsors. We get on all of their investor email lists, and we just keep an eye on deals as they come down the pipeline from all these different sponsors that allow non-accredited investors. And when we see one that looks promising, we send it out to the club and say, hey, this is a deal that we think looks promising for this month. We've scheduled a call with the sponsor for 2 days from now or whatever. Come join us. We're going to grill the sponsor together. We record the meeting and send it out to anyone who can't make it. And if we don't end up raising enough money from club members to meet the minimum investment for that deal, we basically consider that a no vote, by the club, and we move on to the next deal. So, that doesn't happen often. It has happened once. So, again, it's a democracy, right? Denny and I aren't telling people what to invest in. We're not vetting deals for them. We're just passing along deals that we think are a good fit or that look promising, and then we vet them together as a club.
Yeah, that's really a cool way to do it. For me, I think that's the only one that I've seen where it's like an investment club, and you kind of pool your resources, pool your thoughts, pull your knowledge together. It's really cool. And we've been talking about your investment club. And so I know everyone's going to go to SparkRental.com and say, okay, how do I get in this investment club? What's it all about? Once they hit your website, what do they need to do to learn more about the investment club?
Sure. So just click on the menu bar, Co-Investing Club, and we have a little 86-second animated video that explains it, or you can read about how it works, all the details on that page. The only cost is a flat monthly or annual fee. Again, Denny and I don't take a cut of any of the investments. That would be selling securities, which we're definitely not doing. It's a flat membership fee to belong to the club. All the deals are optional. So, you can pass on deals that you aren't feeling, or you can invest in all of them that you like. So
that's very cool. Because they go into a member portal, and then they click on some stuff, and here's the list of all the different goodies and the things that they can invest in, and then diversify their portfolio. What are some of the things, single family, short term? What are some of the things that you're working on right now that are open?
So it's not a list of open deals. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
We pass along new deals every month, but they're only open for a short window and then they close, because most of these are real estate syndications, right? Where there's a one-time raise that the sponsor is raising money for, and then they buy the property and renovate it and so forth. So there isn't a list of open investments, if you will. It's as deals come along, we pass them on to the club. Anyone who wants to participate can. But to answer your question on what we're investing in, the bread and butter is really multifamily value add syndications, because those are just the easiest to find. There are plenty of those to go around. So you can think of them as glorified flips, right? Someone buys a rundown apartment complex, they go in, they renovate it to add value, raise the rents appropriately, and then turn around and sell the property, or refinance it and keep it for infinite returns, right? Where we all get our money back that way instead, and keep collecting cash flow, even though we've gotten our investment capital back. But yeah, beyond multifamily apartment complexes, we love diversification. So we are open to all types of real estate deals. We've done industrial properties, we've done mobile home parks, we've done retail. We are in the middle of looking at a self-storage deal. We've even done a note. It wasn't a syndication deal at all. It was a short-term note, just to mix things up and offer something a little bit different. More of an income-oriented investment. So yeah, it's a mix. But again, the bread and butter multifamily, apartment complexes. But we try to mix it up as much as possible.
Mhm.
Different sponsors, different markets, different types of properties. Yeah, diversification is our number one goal.
Now, if there's any GPs out there listening to our podcast and they're like going, "Ooh, I may have another audience for my syndication." How does the GP get a hold of you? Go to SparkRental.com or what's?
Yeah. You can either email us at support@sparkrental.com or email me personally, Brian@sparkrental.com.
Well, there you go. Now, what's very cool when looking at your website is just all the freebies, just all of the stuff that it's like, I even want to dig into some of these, So tell us about some of these, the calculators, the cash flow calculators, loan amortization, compounding stuff, just all the interactive type stuff. So talk a little bit about all the free tools and the knowledge and education center that your site has actually become.
Yeah, so some of my favorite on there is we create these interactive maps that we update every quarter, and it's things like which real estate markets are cooling right now, which has
Mm.
been a big question over the last year, right? 2 years ago there were probably zero markets that were cooling, but at times over the last year, there have been several hundred markets that were cooling
Mhm.
and seeing, price declines. So, maps like that, we have real estate heat maps that show the average property value by county, and a whole bunch of other just interactive real estate maps that are fun for investors to look at and play around with. We have a map for cities by GRM, or gross rent multiplier, just to give you some ideas of, which cities offer a pretty good price to rent ratio, right? To give you some fresh ideas on maybe where to invest that maybe you haven't heard of before or haven't considered before. But yeah, we also offer a whole bunch of free calculators, rental cash flow calculators, IRR calculators, gross rent multiplier calculators. There's depreciation calculators. There's all that stuff on there that's just fun to play around with, help you make more informed real estate investing decisions. I know that when I first started buying rental properties, I wish that I had sat down
Oh yeah.
and run those numbers through a real estate cash flow calculator, because I probably wouldn't have made so many bad investments. But
Hmm.
because you do have to take into account those irregular expenses like vacancy rate and repairs and maintenance. You have to take into account property management costs, even if you plan on managing the property yourself, because first of all, you might get hit by a car tomorrow and not be able to manage those properties yourself anymore, or you even if you do continue managing yourself, it's still a labor expense, right? So if you're going to calculate the returns of a rental property, for example, versus like a stock index fund, one of those is completely passive. The other one takes a lot of your time and labor. So
That's
it's
right.
apples and oranges if you aren't accounting for the cost of that labor, even if it's your own labor. So anyway, I went on a little bit of a tangent there, but
That's all right. Well, because a lot of people don't realize that the big brother, the government, at some point, you're going to need to take a salary. You can't just work on your 5 or 6 or 10 rentals and not take money. At some point, they're going to want to see some type of a salary taken out. So you do have to consider that. Because I didn't want to, when I got up into 5 and 10, I'm like, no, I'll just take an owner's draw just once in a while, because I don't need the money. And the CPA goes, no, it's time to start taking something out. So you have to do that. And yes, man, did I wish, I started investing, we talked about this. I call it the PG pre-Google days. So I didn't even know what those terms were, and there was no one there to teach me. So everybody, you have no excuse anymore. SparkRental.com, and they have every freaking calculator. I'm looking on the site. You can compare loan terms. You can compare crowdfunding platforms. You can calculate till the cows come home, basically, all the different stuff. So please go to SparkRental.com and just play around and, and learn what those different terms are that we've been discussing. Just absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned the crowdfunding comparison. I've invested in many, if not most, of those real estate crowdfunding platforms myself, mostly so that I can, speak from experience in reviewing them, comparing them, talking about them on our site.
Mm-hmm.
There are a handful of them I really like, and I invest a pretty significant sum of my own money in. But I have invested in a lot of those myself, most of them myself, and yeah, it's a great way if you are very new to real estate investing. You want to dip your toe in the water, investing $10 on a platform like Fundrise, or investing in a platform like Ground Floor. It can be a really easy way to get started in real estate in a passive way when you're not ready yet to get into a syndication, right?
Yeah. Exactly, and you also have a blog where everyone is very informative. I'm looking at a couple. What are squatters' rights? You don't think about that all the time
until you have to.
until you have to, and another thing I'm sure, Brian, that is depending on where you invest and what state. That's also something you really have to worry about now. If you're a squatter in California, good for you, because you could live for free for 6 or 7 months or more. Arizona, no, 5 days and you're out, and the cops will show up, change, and kick you out. So, tell us a little bit about some of the state laws and some of the things you have to kind of worry about when you invest in things.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, actually. So this is maybe politically incorrect, but so we created this an interactive map on the site, actually, of anti-landlord laws.
Yeah.
Because that's really what they are. I mean, the cities and states that have aggressively tenant-friendly laws, that's tenant-friendly at the expense of landlords and investors, right? And this is a little bit of a personal hobby horse for me, because I got burned so badly by how tenant-friendly Baltimore City's laws are.
Yeah.
I mean, the laws are super anti-landlord. Every judge in the city is super anti-landlord. So yeah, I mean, I've had tenants take 11 months to evict, living rent-free, and when I finally got them out, they punched through every single cabinet in the kitchen. They scratched up all the floors intentionally. I mean, yeah, whereas that kind of thing is a lot harder to happen in states with more investor-friendly laws, right? So that is also one thing that we look at with the deals we propose in the co-investing club. Yes, we want as much geographic diversification as possible, but we try not to invest in areas with very anti-landlord laws and regulations.
Yeah, and again, it's not a political thing. It's called a smart business decision, right?
Yeah, because it has a very direct impact on your bottom line.
So it does.
Yeah, it's not an opinion thing. It's about money.
It's about money, and we're trying to run a business, and we're trying to make money for our investors. So those are things, and that's what I learned during COVID. It's like, whoa, there's another thing that I have to worry about is, are you going to shut me down or not? Not only are they landlord friendly, but are they just going to shut me down?
Yeah, and now that is a risk that we all have to take into account as investors, right? That play of eviction moratoriums, that's in the government's playbook now. The precedent has been set. So when it becomes politically expedient again for governments, whether that's the federal government or state and local governments, to institute an eviction moratorium, they will do it when it's politically expedient. 5 years ago, I would not have considered that a realistic risk. Right. Now it is. The precedent has been set. And very tenant-friendly states and cities are going to be much more likely to impose eviction moratoriums in the future than more investor-friendly cities and states.
Yeah, and it's a shame, because we're the big bad rich people, and if you found my private jet, let me know where it is, because
Likewise.
Yeah, because they apparently think that all the landlords out there just have money to burn. But anyway, so your podcast, talk a little bit about that. Everybody, I was just on Brian's podcast. It was very cool. Where can they find your podcast?
So we broadcast our podcast on Facebook, on YouTube. We release it on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes and so forth. We do it once a week. It's called the Live Off Rents podcast. and it's casual. It's short and sweet. We try to keep the episodes to 15, 20 minutes, try to condense as much information as possible into, as short amount of time as possible, because we're all busy, right?
I tried to talk fast when I was on it, and I was like, okay, let's go.
Well, because yes, we've all heard podcast episodes that were an hour, 2 hours long that were interesting and were in-depth conversations. But even if someone recommends to me this outstanding podcast episode that's 2 hours long, I'm going to be like, do I have 2 hours for that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not in LA traffic,
Right. So, but everyone's got 15 or 20 minutes, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's why we try to keep them short and sweet.
So before we leave, where can everyone find you? SparkRental.com, LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the major social platforms. And you can reach out to us by email, either support@sparkrental.com. You can reach me personally at brian@sparkrental.com. We're very accessible. We answer all of these emails ourselves. We don't have a whole bunch of minions out there and answering these emails for us. We're very much a mom and pop company. And that's important to us. That's a core value of ours, to be, a little quirky, a little, to be small and mavericks and be very personal.
Absolutely. And I think everyone appreciates that, instead of just being a number at one of these large private equity firms. It's like, wow, I actually get to talk with the owners, and the general partners. Brian, it has been wonderful. It's great to see you again. Everybody, again, SparkRental.com. There's no excuses anymore. You have the site with all the information. I'm actually going to go start playing around on it. But Brian, thank you so much for being on the Richer Geek.
Mike, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Take care, everybody.